Hello again and welcome to another episode of the Devos and Dumbbells podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you with us today, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Welcome to the show. Man, I love the show. I love what I get to do. Devos and Dumbbells is all about just encouraging you in your faith, providing some devotion, some things to think about for your week. And it's also about health and fitness. I work at a church. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a media pastor at a church in College Station called Skybreak Church. And I'm also a part-time personal trainer. So I love helping people spiritually, and I love helping people physically with their health and fitness. So this kind of comes natural to me. So I'm thankful for this opportunity. Today, I want to talk all about worry. And then for the fitness portion, I'm going to talk about the 5, what I believe most important steps are when you're trying to start off losing body fat. So we're going to talk about worrying less and how to lose body fat. But before we get to that point, I'm going to start with a prayer. I'm going to invite God into this space. And so I invite you to join me. God, I thank you for today. I thank you for another day of life. I thank you for your grace and your mercy that's new every single day. Lord, I ask that you would be with us during this time. Holy Spirit, inhabit this space. Speak through me, God, and I just pray that you would speak to us right wherever we find ourselves, whatever situations we're in. God, thank you. We love you. We trust you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so what you can do is if you want to jump forward to maybe the fitness portion, I'm going to have the timestamps in the description below. You can see right there. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to be reading from Matthew chapter 6. We're going to read Matthew chapter 6, and we're just going to read one verse today, and that is verse 34. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Verse 34. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble on its own. When we talk about worry, it sounds oversimplified to simply say, don't worry about it, right? It's hard to say that and believe it when the stress of life, maybe work, maybe the stress of what's happening in the world or in the news, it's hard to say don't worry about it without feeling a little bit of worry yourself. And so I've been here. I know you've been here. Most likely you've experienced some sort of worry, whether it's something small like worrying about a test you have coming up, or maybe it's worrying about an evaluation that you have at work or a project deadline that you have coming up and you're worried about it, you're stressed out about it. Maybe it's worrying if God's going to provide. Maybe you feel like you're in a space of lack right now and you're just having to trust God and you're worried about it. If you're honest, you're worried about it. And let me just start by saying worry is a normal emotion. It's natural. We've all experienced it. So I don't want you to feel like you're alone or that you're the only person who's ever dealt with this. We've all dealt with this in some form or fashion. I've heard this quote and I wrote it down and I really like it. It kind of talks about the difference of worrying and planning, because I am somewhat of a planner. I know there are people who are way more strict in the plan than I am, but I'm somewhat of a planner, and this jumped out to me. It says, planning for tomorrow is time well spent, but worrying about tomorrow is time wasted. So I want to talk about the difference in planning and worrying. And I just wrote a few things down. Planning is thinking ahead, whether it's, goals that you have, tasks that you have to get done, steps you're wanting to take. Maybe that's in your relationship with God. Maybe that's in your relationship with your spouse or some friends, or maybe that's in your finances. Planning is thinking ahead and taking steps towards those goals. It's also scheduling, right? When you think of planning, you think of scheduling. I know some people that I work with are really good at scheduling things in their planner. I do that somewhat, but I'm a little more free spirited, I guess you would say. I'm not like a hippie or anything. I do like to plan, but maybe not as much as other people. But it's having a schedule. And ultimately, in my life, when I plan, I also have to trust God, because life happens, right? You don't plan for certain things, certain events in your life to happen. You don't plan on getting hurt by people. You don't plan on being betrayed. You don't plan on a disease. You don't plan on a pandemic. These things just happen. And so with planning comes a certain aspect, certain amount of trust that you have to have in God. And so that's kind of the opposite of worrying. Worrying, you may still do all these things. You may still have goals. You may think ahead. You may have steps you want to take. You may have schedules. But the difference in planning and worry is that worry tends to consume you with fear, right? Worry can tend to consume you with fear. And ultimately, if you let it, it could hinder or interfere with your relationship with God. It's not that you don't trust God. It's not that you don't have a great relationship with God. You may be great spiritually, but that worry allows fear to creep in. And this is just things I've experienced, so maybe it's different for you. But when I've worried about something, it lets fear creep in. And my relationship with God is not where it should be because, yeah, I may be a Christian, I may be a Christ follower, or maybe, spending time with Him, but there's always this element of fear over faith. There's always this element of fear over trust, I should say. And so it's a real emotion. Like I said before, it's not wrong. Like, I don't want you to feel like an outcast just because you're a worrywart or, you worry a lot more than others. But I do want you to understand that worrying allows fear to creep into your life, and it can hinder your relationship with God. Most of the time, what I've experienced is that typically we worry about things that aren't even going to happen. Right, we go to worst case scenario in our minds. Right, if we're worried about something, it's never on the lower end of worry. It's usually the worst case scenario, and 99.99% of the time, it doesn't even happen the way we anticipated. But because of all the worry and the fear that we've allowed into our hearts, it's hard. It's hard to deal with it. And so my wife, she asks me sometimes because. Not that I haven't worried, but I'm really good at not worrying, almost to a fault maybe. But my wife will ask me sometimes, she'll say, how do you not worry? As I'm recording this podcast, we're in the process of trying to buy a house. Okay, so this is a real life situation. When we put an offering on the house, it got accepted. We had the inspection. It had a lot of things that needed to be fixed. And for our first house, it seemed like a money pit, so we kind of backed up and we said, let's evaluate. Ultimately, we stepped down. We terminated. We weren't under contract just yet. It was an option period, but we stepped down. We're not going to buy this house. And so my wife asked me, how do you not worry about these things? And ultimately, and I don't want this to sound over spiritual. Please hear me when I say this, but ultimately, it's because I trust God. And maybe that's because I've dealt with certain situations in my life that I've been in really dark places before, and I knew God brought me out of it. And so because of that, I know that if God did it before, He can do it again. I think that needs to be said again. If God did it before, He can do it again. And so that's why I don't worry as much, because I trust God. I know God's going to find us a house. I know we're going to get a good deal. I know God's going to provide. With this whole pandemic, and obviously there's this certain level of uncertainty that goes on in our minds, but ultimately, I can just say this confidently that I trust God, and I see Him as my provider. I see Him as my peace and my comfort. And so worry, and not that it hasn't before, but where I'm at now, worry, I don't allow it to creep in like I used to. And so ultimately, it comes down to just trusting God. And so that's what I want to encourage you in today, is that if you could just trust God, it doesn't mean that life doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that you won't have doubts sometimes, or some fears, or worry, uncertainty, whatever. But it just means that no matter what happens, I know and I am confident that God's got me in the palm of His hand. He's got my back. He's got my best interests at heart. And ultimately, He is going to take care of me. So that's what I want to wrap this up by saying. Worry less. Worry less. All right. Now on to the fitness portion. One of the most common goals when it comes to health and fitness, and this is not a secret, most people want to lose fat. They want to lose body weight. This is hands down most people's goal when they go to a gym. They go in there with the goal of eating healthier and working out more and losing body fat. And so I wanted to talk about 5 steps to fat loss, and especially if you're just starting out in this, I wish I would have known these sooner. For those of you who know my journey, about 3 years ago, I was pushing 265, 70 pounds, somewhere in there. I was about to go to a size 42, I believe, waist, 40 maybe, I can't remember. I was in a 38, and it was getting too small, and it was at that point that I knew I needed to make a change, and so I did, and I'm now wearing a 34, and it feels awesome, but I wish I would have learned these things sooner. And so there are 5, there are many things that can contribute to weight loss, but here are 5 simple steps that you can take right now to help with fat loss and weight loss. Number 1, and I've said this before, this is not a secret if you've followed me for any amount of time. Number 1, avoid heavily processed foods. What does that mean? Foods that come in boxes and packages, and there's a lot of preservatives and a lot of ingredients. They have a long shelf life. These foods are highly processed, highly palatable, meaning they taste really good. And I've used the example before, and it's kind of silly, but it works. If I were to tell you, hey, eat 4 potatoes, you could not do it. It would be really challenging for you to eat 4 potatoes in one sitting. However, a bag of potato chips is roughly 4 to 5 potatoes, and we could knock it out like that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's delicious, right? There's salt and all this other, there's other things in this food to make it taste really good. So you can sit down and knock out a bag of potato chips easily, which is about 4 potatoes. Okay, so highly palatable. These foods are designed and engineered, if you will, to make you want more. The old phrase goes, you can never have just one potato chip, right? That just goes to prove that I know what I'm talking about. So avoiding heavily processed foods is important. There's been several studies done, and you can look these up on your own. There's plenty. On average, someone who eats highly processed foods versus someone who eats more natural foods, on average, eats 500 more calories a day. Now, what does that look like? A pound equals 3,500 calories. Just a pound equals 3,500 calories. And so if you are eating 500 calories a day, times 7 days a week, that's 3,500 calories. That is a pound a week extra that you are consuming. And so just knocking out the highly processed foods alone will tremendously benefit you. I got in a conversation with someone the other day, and by no means am I a doctor, but a lot of doctors will say, don't put salt on your food. But what I've learned is, and what I've studied is that if you were to just knock out highly processed foods, you would knock out so much sodium in your diet that you could put salt on everything and still not equal the amount of sodium in one processed meal. Now, if your doctor says don't put salt on your meal, listen to your doctor. But what I'm saying, a more simpler first step would just be knock out processed food. So what does that look like? The least ingredients, the better, right? Like, what is in chicken breast? Chicken. It wasn't a trick question, okay? What's in chicken breast? Chicken. What's in green beans? Green beans. What's in a banana? A banana. That's the ingredient. So the less ingredients, the better. So when you see preservatives or things that, give it a longer shelf life, it's highly processed. It's made to taste really good. Even it could be healthy food. It could be quote unquote healthy food. If there's a lot of ingredients and it has a long shelf life and it comes in a box or a package or whatever, it's highly processed, and you should avoid them and avoid heavily processed foods. So number 1, avoid heavily processed foods. Number 2, hit your protein target. Okay? Without going into the science of it, protein is the muscle building macronutrient. It's what your muscles are made of. It's found in meat and dairy products. So what I've learned in my own walk, in my own training and training other people, is that we have no problem eating carbs. We have no problem eating fats. It's readily available. And so where we do lack is protein. And so what I've been doing more recently with my clients and even my own health journey is instead of focusing so much on macronutrients as a whole, like it's good to do that, but to start out, I would just focus on getting your protein, because the more muscle you are building, you're eating protein, you're working out, the more fat you are going to burn. So hitting your protein target is so important. And most people underestimate how much protein they are eating. So it'd be good to track that just to see where you're at. Which leads me into number 3, building muscle. All right, so number 3, build muscle to create a faster metabolism. What you want to do, what you want to become is a fat burning machine. And how do you do that? You build muscle. Building muscle burns fat. This is not up for debate. This is science. I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. I'm not making this up. The best way to burn body fat is to build more muscle. And so that means resistance training. Now, I don't mean, and when people hear resistance training, they automatically assume I'm talking about load up the bar as heavy as you possibly can and go full tilt beast mode in the gym. That's awesome. But resistance training could be body weight exercises, body weight squats, push-ups, anything that provides resistance. That's going to be really good for you. And the more you build muscle, the easier it is for you to burn body fat. Think of it like this. Most people, when they want to lose weight, automatically assume they need to do more cardio. Okay? Actually, that's backwards. Okay, so what's going to happen without getting too in depth is when you are doing a lot of cardio, your body has to become really efficient. Okay, so muscle is an expensive tissue. It requires a lot of calories to maintain. And so your body is going to want to get rid of that muscle tissue. Secondly, it's going to conserve more of your energy, because if my body knows, hey, Jared is about to do an hour of cardio every single day, it's going to conserve those calories, and my metabolism is going to slow down during the day because my body is going to be using those calories. And so, will you burn a lot of calories doing cardio? Yes, but once you stop doing that cardio, pretty much immediately, the calorie burn stops. But if you are building muscle, protein synthesis is taking place, and those calories have to be designated to building the muscle fibers. And so what that means is during the day, I can be doing nothing and still be burning calories because my body's building muscle because of my resistance training workouts. All right. I saw an advertisement pop up on Instagram, and it kind of made me mad. It was targeting heavy people, and it showed this figure of this guy, and it said, your current weight is like 276. And then it said your goal weight is like 170 something or 180 something. And then it gave you a calculation and said, okay, you need to run 3 miles a day. Y'all, I don't know anyone, especially someone that's 276 pounds, that wants to get up and run 3 miles a day for 7 days a week. That's just crazy. That's not sustainable. Now, there are people that do that and they run and they love running. Awesome. More power to you. But to the average person, running 7 days a week, 3 miles a day is just not doable. The better way and more sustainable way to do that, to burn calories, to burn body fat, is to build more muscle. And that kind of goes back with number 2. Protein is going to contribute a lot to that. So number 3, build muscle to create a faster metabolism. I'm in a place in my life right now where I can eat more food and still lose weight because my body is constantly burning calories through the muscle building process. Now, I'm not saying overdo it, right? But I remember when I first lost all my weight, I cut down to like 1,800 calories, which isn't a lot. And then when I tried to start putting muscle back on, I got up to like 3,800 calories before any weight was able to come back on me because my body was just burning it so quickly. That's a good spot to be in. And so you don't want to live the rest of your life running every single day and eating like a rabbit. It's just not sustainable. If it works for you, great. But more often than not, the people that I see, it's just not sustainable. So, number 4, increase your daily activity. I mentioned this in a post this morning on my Instagram story. If you work out an hour a day and you work a desk job where you're sitting around for 7 hours a day with limited movement, you do not live an active lifestyle. I don't care how intense your 1 hour workout is. If you are sitting around for 7 hours a day, that's the majority of your time. You are sedentary. You aren't living an active lifestyle, no matter how much you think you may be. I was in this space. And so what I mean by increase your daily activity, I just mean simply get up and go walk. Maybe every hour, 30 minutes or whatever, get up from your desk, walk around the building. We have people do this at my work. Go for a walk in the mornings, go for a walk in the evenings. In fact, today, right before I recorded this podcast, I went and walked at the park. And the magic number, I guess, is 10,000 steps. It can differ for everyone, but that's a good place to start. Just get more activity. That can mean parking further away from the door at Walmart. That can mean, instead of driving to the mailbox, if you have to drive to the mailbox, maybe walk to the mailbox. Just getting in extra activity is going to significantly improve calorie burn. And I'm not saying lots of cardio. I just mean basic activity like walking. Just do more of that and you'll burn more calories and it'll contribute to your weight loss. Number 5, the final step, I promise this is the last one, is get good sleep. Your body perceives stress pretty much the same way, no matter where it comes from, whether it's work stress, whether it's stress in your marriage, whether it's financial stress. Your body doesn't know the difference. It just knows that it's stressed out. And a lack of sleep definitely spikes up the stress level in your body. And so getting good sleep doesn't mean 6 hours, right? I mean 8 hours. As hard as that might be, that's the goal, is to get 8 hours of sleep. I said this a few weeks ago. There was a study done. On average, the people that got 8 hours of sleep versus the people who got like 6 hours of sleep. The people who got 8 hours of sleep saw 50% more muscle gain than the people who got 6 hours. 50%. That's not a small number. And so sleep is restorative. It's recuperative. It's conducive to building muscle. It restores your body. So when you wake up, you're not feeling stressed. You're not, walking around like a zombie all day. And so some steps that I've taken to get better sleep is right around 8:30. I go to bed at 9:30. Right around 8:30, I start turning down the lights. We have a salt lamp that I turn on just to get some low light. If I'm on my phone or watching TV, I have blue light blocking glasses to help me keep the blue light, because blue light keeps you awake. That's a whole nother thing. And I get ready for bed. The same way I get ready for work in the morning, I have to prepare, get ready, work out, a shower, eat breakfast, all that. I get ready for bed. And a lot of people don't do that. They just, when they're tired, they go to bed. Usually they're staring at their phone for another 30 minutes or they're wide awake, so they're staring at the ceiling and can't go to sleep. These are just some things that I do. Turning off the lights, getting ready for bed. I put my robe on that makes me feel comfortable and relaxed. Get it dark as I can. And if you're in your room and you're going to bed, get the room as dark as you possibly can. That's going to help contribute to that sleep. So those 5 steps, if you do those right now, I guarantee you'll start losing some weight. So I'm just going to recap them again. Number 1, avoid heavily processed food. Number 2, hit your protein target. Number 3, build muscle through resistance training to create a faster metabolism. Number 4, increase your daily activity. And number 5, get good sleep. Do those 5 things and you're going to see results. That's the episode. That's the podcast for today. I hope you found that helpful. If you did, share the love. Maybe send this over to a friend. Post it on social media. You can follow me on Instagram at Jared Wayne Ayers. You can find me on Facebook, Jared Ayers Fitness. You can look up jaredAyersFitness.com. I have some resources for you there. I would love to help you out. Love to work with you. Check out that website. I love you guys. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.